And so we've got Andy Chan. Thank you so much for coming on, Andy.
No, thanks for having me.
You're the author of the book Dynamic Balance. So Andy Chan is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, educator, and presenter from Hong Kong. Andy has a genuine passion for making positive impact in the fitness industry through learning and sharing different unique methodologies. He currently teaches education courses on behalf of companies such as the National Academy of Sports Medicine, TRX. This is why we want Dr. Elite on here. TRX, Trigger Point Performance, and Power Plate. He has made guest appearance on Hong Kong television shows as well as presenting at different public fitness events. Drawing on his master's degree in exercise science and influenced by his 10-year stay in the United States, Andy has a unique outlook on health and athletic performance. You'll find hints of traditional Chinese medicine. I love that. We got to talk about that. Integrated into his training philosophy, where harmony between all aspects of life is a prerequisite to optimal health and human performance.
I figure I need to get into the fitness industry so that I can help those who are on the path. And so I got into fitness. And then the more I get into it, the more I realize I need to go back to school because there's just so much to learn about within the health and fitness space. And if I want to differentiate myself career wise, and if I just want to be a responsible coach, I need to go back to school so that I can at least have the qualifications to back up what I say.
So, for what you currently do, is there a market in Hong Kong for this?
Yeah, there's a very big market. I mean, the fitness industry is blooming, I think, worldwide, and so it is common to have a personal trainer now, especially within the neighborhood that I live in, because I work in kind of the central business hub of Hong Kong. So it is quite normal to have a personal trainer,
Mm.
and everyone's thriving. But at the same time, because the barrier to entry is quite low, so it is quite competitive as it is.
Okay, so writing the book, like we know Chris and I co-wrote this thing, right? And it's only like it's about research is what we do. It's only like 190 pages, and that's with ads and with pictures. So, but this took us like forever. So I know how hard from one author to another. You know, we know how hard it is, but a lot of people don't appreciate the difficulty it took. Like, first of all, what inspired you to write it, and then what was that process like of writing the book?
Respect to you guys as well for writing the book. For me, it took about 3 years, just because I also had a co-author, and I'm sure you guys know that you could be great buddies with your co-author, but sometimes when it comes to writing a book or any project, I think a lot of communication is needed, and whenever communication is involved, a lot of time has to be put into it, just because there's a lot of back and forth discussion. But the thing that inspired me to write the book was actually my master's project. So, as part of my master's degree, we had to do a statistics course, and that is because with all the evidence-based practice out there, or with all the research out there, we have to learn to interpret, right? I'm sure you guys talk a lot about this, right? We have to be able to read research, or else we'll just be throwing out like every other guy out there. Oh, research says this, research. So in that term, in that semester, in the statistics class, we learned to interpret research, and as part of the class, we there was a project when we get to pick our own question, and then we get to look into the database to look into what the research says about the topic that we are curious in. And for me at the time, I really wanted to know the efficacy of cubbing. So for those who don't know, cubbing is these, it might be silicone or it might be glass cups that you apply on the body, and it sucks the skin out of it, and after the treatment you're going to see these purple dots on the skin. And this was made popular by Michael Phelps in the Olympics in the West, whereas in the East, in Southeast Asia, people have been applying this technique for thousands of years. And so I wanted to know what the research says about it, because it was quite interesting to me to apply the Western lens to an Eastern practice, really, because that's where it originated. And while I was looking into the database, I found that there were two perspectives or two narratives on this topic. One is the Western human movement science side. So in this side, the research mainly focuses on soft tissue. So in other words, when I apply cubbing technique or other modalities to my skin, what happens to the soft tissue? Does it alter the state of it? What happens physically to the soft tissue? Now, when I get to the eastern side, it was when things got a bit mystical and esoteric because you look online and they would talk about all these Chinese medicine terms: qi, blood, yin yang, five elements. And I can be honest with you, even as a person who grew up in Hong Kong, I had no idea what these terms were about because growing up, no one was ever able to explain to me in a tangible way what these terms meant. So my experience with Chinese medicine at the time would only be, okay, I'll see the yin yang sign at the local massage store inside a dodgy mall, and you have no idea what goes on inside, and
Mhm.
that's as much as I know. And so that sparked an interest in me and it sparked an idea, and that was to perhaps go into Chinese medicine a bit more from more of a digestible and scientific background, because
Mhm.
I think that the Western audience would benefit a lot from the philosophy. So I, at the time, I also asked myself, how can I differentiate, right? Because as I said, the fitness industry is quite a competitive market. So we should play to our own strength. And for me, it makes perfect sense that I will be the guy to explore this topic because there's actually no other book on Amazon that explores fitness training and Chinese medicine. So that's how the idea came about. And after 3 years, the book was born.
So, did you find any scientific rationale behind cupping?
Yeah, well, I think right now the research tells us that there is efficacy in terms of soft tissue release, but I would say that when it comes to the claims that Chinese medicine has, those things are a bit harder to prove, and that is because of the language that they use. And I guess I can use this opportunity to just break down why I say that. When we talk about Chinese medicine, you often hear terms like qi, blood, yin yang, five elements. And what they are essentially is they are languages that the Chinese medicine practitioners use to describe energy. Because if you think about the West in physiology, you would talk about ATP, you talk about blood sugar level, you talk about the pH level, and etc. But if you think about Chinese medicine, thousands of years ago, they would not have the equipment necessary to figure out all these stuff. So what they did was they thought of analogies and they thought of languages that could describe different phenomena. So in their perspective, you have to understand that all the terms within Chinese medicine, they always have two connotations. One is the functional meaning, and second is the philosophical. Okay, so qi. Functionally, it just means energy. All right, everything has qi. I have qi. You have qi. Everyone has qi. The rock has qi. Basically, whatever item there is on Earth, there would be an energy attached to it. So that's functional. Second is philosophical. Qi is something that you cannot see, but it is something that sustains life and energy. So I think usually it's the philosophical side that get people's heads spinning because you're like, what do you mean philosophical? I cannot see chi. What are you saying? It must be false. So I think with that in mind, usually this is where things gets lost in research because there's always a philosophical meaning to the terms in Chinese medicine. So it is quite hard to prove from a scientific point of view because it has to be quite black and white in order to be proven by research. And I think that's kind of where the gap is at the moment.
Seriously, it's a good book. I've actually interviewed this guy, John Leaf. He's a psychiatrist. He wrote the book, The Secret Language of Cells. And we'll probably have him on again, Chris, on our show. And, you know, he actually references Chinese medicine in the book because he's a Western researcher, obviously. And the more neurotransmitters we're discovering, signaling molecules, like we're just starting to discover this stuff, it's almost exactly what Chinese medicine says. You know, they just have different words for it, but the way the neurons send signals to various muscle cells and across different parts of the body, they're far away. They're not touching. So it is chi. It's the same thing, and it can be stimulated by needles. You know, like they do in acupuncture, or it can be stimulated by drugs, like they do in Western medicine. But it's the same thing. That's crazy. How the Chinese were on this like thousands of years ago, right?
Yeah, it is, and I also think on the topic of acupuncture, we also have to be cautious in reading the research because some people will claim that acupuncture is a pseudoscience because they would say that it's a placebo effect. Because if you look into the research, a lot of times, in order for there to be randomized controlled trial, there has to be a a placebo effect, and so in acupuncture, the placebo would be, I don't know, a toothpick or just something that's pointy. But the fact is, whenever we're applying something to the skin, we are altering because there are sensors on the skin that would also send our brain signals, right? And so we also have to take that into consideration when we say that this is not is a placebo effect, because what we're saying is whenever we're touching the skin, we're manipulating it, or we're sending a signal to the skin. So just be careful whenever you read terms like that, because to me that's also an indicator that maybe the person making the statement not truly understanding what research is about, because you cannot really have a placebo for acupuncture. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly right. Yeah, especially when you're literally impacting either the pathways of the cell signaling, or you're directly stimulating a nerve to send more signals than it is. Like a nerve that's been asleep or something like that. You're waking it up. So yeah, there's no way that could be placebo. As soon as you puncture the skin, it's no longer placebo. You're causing inflammation. You're causing all kinds of things. So, Chris, you got to do it, man. You got to try acupuncture, maybe live
I'll
on
do
the
it.
show.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Is
that would be a good episode.
Andy, when's the next time you're
sure.
coming to SoCal? Can you do this on Chris?
So is there an education for being an acupuncturist? I guess.
There is. I mean, people go to school, and I I'm just a fitness instructor, so I'm obviously not qualified to perform anything, diagnose anything related to Chinese medicine, as I only implement the philosophies of it to my training. But there people go to school for it. It's a doctorate degree, and you have to be licensed. So make sure
So
you go to a quality one. But I also want to remind everyone that I also think that a lot of people are underqualified, and so you have to do your due diligence and make sure
sound,
that you go to the right one. Don't just go to a random person.
Uh,
You know what's interesting about going to school in Shanghai is, so my co-author Stella Wong, she has a PhD in Chinese medicine from University of Hong Kong, and coincidentally, her research focus was on anxiety and acupuncture. And but on the Shanghai medical education system nowadays, within the Chinese medicine curriculum, Stella, my co-author, was telling me that in China, let's say it's a 4-year degree, the first 2 years you learn the Western medical system first before you progress into the Chinese medical system. And I believe that's actually a good idea to study both, because in the past, obviously, if you do conventional Western medicine, you just do that, and if you do Chinese medicine, you only do Chinese medicine. But we now know that if there is great science in the Western side, and it has changed thousands, millions of lives, and so I think a lot of them are doing like a hybrid schooling system, which I believe actually should be the philosophy, or should be the kind of the way to go for all of us too. If we can take the best of both worlds, then we can truly make the best decisions. Because what I've realized so far is, going on these podcasts, people think that because I I I use some of Chinese medicine, therefore I must be a diehard Chinese medicine, person, fan, whatever. But I believe that for anyone listening, if they can just take the best of everything, I think they'll make much healthier decisions, and as a result, they will find better health and longevity.
yeah, I would completely agree with that.
like, what's the rationale overall, like on a macro level, to your training regimen or your philosophy, maybe?
Yep. Uh, Obviously, in the U.S., you would go to a qualified professional for a particular area. So when it comes to health and fitness, you go to your personal trainer, you go to your sports medicine professional, be it athletic trainer or physio or physical therapist, and then you might go to a dietitian for dietary advice. The great thing about this is, the expert that you're going to, that you're visiting, is an absolute expert in that area, just because he or she will have specialized in that area for a number of years. The problem is that there's no communication between different professionals, unless if you really do make an effort, unless if it's within the same sensor. So what we're saying in direct balance is that if you look into Chinese medicine, or if you look to other ancient cultures, for example, they will have recognized the fact that different areas of life are intricately linked, and they're interconnected. So it is impossible for us just to isolate one area, because that means we will have overlooked other areas that might cause imbalance. So, in diet balance, we basically just look at three key areas of lifestyle. How are we eating? So our diet, does it match my current body state doesn't match the weather, because the season and the weather actually it drives our mood and the way we feel. And then we looked at emotions. Are we managing our emotions okay? Chances are, with all the distractions available now, we are in a continuous state of partial attention, because there's always a distraction, right? Social media, and and stuff. So we're always stressed, which means a lot of people have anxiety, and especially we know that anxiety disorder is just a false trigger of anxiety, because there's a perceived threat that is not genuine, and so a
That's
lot of
bullshit.
times that
Yeah.
is, yeah, that is happening because of, I don't know, we're overstressed or we're overstimulated. And so we looked at emotions, and then lastly we looked at training, which is the bread and butter of what I do, and the ways we train. And ultimately, if we kind of look at the three areas and how they're linked, we will realize that actually they have a knock-on effect, because how the way I feel would drive what I eat, and what I eat would
Mm.
dictate, how I feel. And it's the same way when it comes to training, right? If I'm just training to be stiff, then I'm not going to make it to a professional level, because I'm going to be a horrible dancer like Chris. And then
This is hilarious.
sorry, Chris.
Best
Yeah,
interview
so
ever. Best guest ever. Wow, Andy, I love you,
yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. So that's gonna get us nowhere. And and and,
That's,
uh, and so they're all
I
linked.
mean, you're exactly right. Like feelings, I think feelings, obviously they can't be ignored because I know people who have pushed their feelings, buried them so deep.
Well, first of all, we need to know that working out, exercising, it just doesn't make sense biologically. Okay, I know I'm a fitness instructor. This might shock someone, but listen to this: exercising, it's just unnatural, because throughout human history, we never had to voluntarily suffer, and essentially that's what we do. Okay, when you go to the gym for 1 hour on that treadmill, you suffer for an hour. If you think about human history, there's always been a function to physical activity. All right, I'm going to hunt, I'm going to get water, I'm sending my kids to wherever. Okay, so I I I think that to answer the question of the lack of motivation of not wanting to exercise, I think if you don't really have a purpose to exercise, then that's always going to be difficult, because there's no purpose to why you exercise. So always set a goal. I'm here so that I want to look better in that dress, or I want to be a better athlete, or I just want to be healthier. I think if you have that in you, it'll be much easier to start. So that's one. And then on the emotions part, for me, I like to stick with principles, because obviously there could be a spectrum of mental wellness or mental health issues that people go through. But for me, when they walk in, I stress it to them that it's really important that they practice breathing. So breathing is a common practice throughout all cultures, and now there's an increased level of evidence that supports the idea that breathing is using breathing as a kind of relaxation technique. And by breathing, I don't mean going to a meditation class. While they could do that, but I can tell you that most of my clients in Hong Kong would not have the time to go to a meditation class once every single day, because in my opinion, if you just go once a week, then it's not that effective. It's effective, but it doesn't really change your life. So for me, it's all about the small moments, like when you're waiting for the elevator. Whenever you have a minute to spare, you just work on deep breathing. So through your belly button, you do some deep breaths, and we know that that will down regulate. It will calm the nervous system, it will calm the mind down. And we know that when the mind is down regulating, that's going to improve your digestion, that's going to relax your body, you're not going to be as stiff.
So,
And then actually, this is a good segue to talk about why that is. And we know that whenever we're stressed, like people who are anxious, usually don't digest very well. And that's because, before an important meeting, before an important game, we will experience an upset stomach, or butterflies in the stomach. And that is because whenever we are in that fight or flight, or whenever we're in that heightened state, our digestive system temporarily shuts off so that other parts of the body can utilize blood flow and other resources. So we know that the mind wants to prep the body into fight or flight, because there is a threat or perceived threat right in front of us. So I either fight it or I leave. And at the same time, not only does the digestive system temporarily takes a break, your soft tissue or your muscles become stiffer, because I have to generate force as fast as possible in order to fight or run as fast as possible. So my muscles also becomes more stiff. And that's why when you think about people who are stressed all the time, they are likely to be the ones who are stiff, stiff as a robot. And because that is intricately linked to our mind. If our minds are relaxed, then the whole body will relax as well. So this is where breathing comes in, because we kind of want to downregulate the system so that we're not just always stress. And in the yin yang philosophy, this is where balance comes in, because you want both stress and
Andy
recovery.
Chan, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Andy. It was very
Thank you
nice
so much
meeting
for
you.
having us, guys.
Great
It's-
conversation.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Dynamic Balance, everybody. I
guys.
just ordered it. I'm getting it Sunday. Talk to you later. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.